Welcome back. First thing I have to talk about is what I'm wearing. So this is California Golden Seals, the hat. This is Oakland Seals, the jersey. So yeah, they changed their look a couple of times. They changed their logo a couple of times. It really didn't make much of a difference for the Seals. It's not a great setup at all throughout their existence in Oakland, and they tried. They tried. The only issues they had was they had trouble scoring. They had trouble keeping the puck out of their net. They weren't great at drafting, and they were not good at making trades either. Outside of that, very well run organization, right down to the white skates and gloves. So the record in 73-74 was 13-55 and 10. And when I was looking at, historically bad seasons and I saw the Seals in there, first off, I wasn't surprised. And secondly, I'm like, how do I pick just one? So this is a little different than the truly awful seasons I've talked about in the past, but some standard stuff on the board here, including that the number 2 pick in 1973 before this season, which was used by Atlanta to draft Tom Lysiak. Well, that pick belonged to Montreal because Montreal likes to take top draft picks from the California Seals, and it was payment for them taking Carol Vadnais and the interleague draft, so like the waiver draft. So, pick up a guy on waivers now. You don't owe a team anything, but back then you did. And it was the mistake that kept on mistaking, I guess. It's insane looking at this team, and again, trying to find one season. This one stands out for having 13 wins, but not by a lot, and we'll get to that. So they started the season 2-0. Good start. Must have went to their heads. They lost 9 of their next 10. When they rounded out the season, they didn't run it out on a high note. And this is 74. This is before we had sales at the deadline, and that team was tanking the deadline. No, this team never intentionally did much. So they lost 11 of their final 12 games that season, and that 12th game was a tie. So go Seals. And keep in mind, this is a team that's not drawing fans. This kind of mismanagement makes that so much worse. This team was just mismanaged from ownership on down, and I feel bad for the players that had to play. There were some good players on this team as well, including Walt McKechnie was here. They'd waive him. He was gone on waivers the following fall. Must have been because he was a good scorer. I never really quite understand when I'm looking back through the history of the Seals much of anything. I look at their trades, I look at players they get rid of. I'm like, but he had good stats, and look how he went on to have a really good career. First example, Reggie Leach. He had to play through this. So he was a minus 62. Minus 62, 78 game season. He had 22 goals, 24 assists, 46 points. So a team that can't score and he's a 20 goal scorer, that makes him important. Ivan Boldarev, one of my favorite Canucks when I started watching hockey. One of the best mustaches in the history of the National Hockey League as well. He was a minus 53. So, yeah. 25 goals, 31 assists, 56 points for Boldarev, which I think is miraculous. Nothing short of miraculous for Boldarev. I don't think I've done a Boldarev video yet. I've meant to if I haven't. I need to rectify that if I haven't. But yeah, Boldarev minus 53, Leach minus 62, but both really good players who went on to have very good careers, not reflecting on them. Joel Meloche was the starter. I've done a career video on Joel Meloche. I have a Joel Meloche image of him wearing a Seals jersey because when you're going to get a signed picture of Joel Meloche, you want to make that Seals because, boy, did he go through it. 9-33 and 5 with an 878 save percentage. I'm guessing, even though there was no advanced stats around at the time, I'm guessing high danger chances against were through the roof. High danger chances for the Seals, probably pretty low. So the team's save percentage was 874. Again, not optimal. Their goals against average as a team, 4.35. So the overall numbers, there's nothing really positive here. They allowed 6 or more goals 26 times in 78 games. And alarmingly, they scored 2 or less goals 45 times by my count in 78 games. So you have a team that's allowing at least 5 goals most nights, it seems, and they're scoring maybe 2. So Joel Meloche, go do it. Get her done. Come on. I don't know how Meloche could have made this any better. So one notable, too, is that Hall of Fame builder Craig Patrick, who would go on to be a general manager with the Pittsburgh Penguins, was part of this team. He was traded the year after to St. Louis, and it was a trade that the Seals lost because it's what they did. So their leading scorer that season was Joey Johnston in 78 games, 27 goals, 40 assists, 67 points. Johnston would actually be out of the NHL 2 years later. Had one more year with the Seals, went on to the Chicago Blackhawks, had a rough season with the Blackhawks, and then that was the end of his National Hockey League career. Now, they scored 195 goals in 78 games. That's 15th out of 16 teams in the NHL. They allowed 342, which was dead last. So if you're second to last in goals for and you're last in goals against, you're not winning very much. And that was the case here. They had 2 winning streaks of 2 games. Their other 13 wins, they were all one at a time. So there were no 3-game winning streaks. If they won 2, you go, oh, they're due for a loss because they've won 2. They had 5 losing streaks of 5 games or more. So again, just the overall numbers, just ugly. So if we look at all of this, after the season was done, and I do consider this season to be the lowest point, after the season was done, they traded Ivan Boldyrev to Chicago. Boldyrev would have a pretty good run with Chicago before going to Vancouver. He was traded for Mike Christie and Len Frigg. If you're going to have a guy in your team in California, a team that loses all the time, the last name Frigg might be a good one. Also, Reggie Leach was traded to Philadelphia in a trade that I'm going to go ahead and say the California Golden Seals lose this one. For Al McAdam, Larry Wright, a 1974 first, and George Pursuit as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say the Seals lose that. Even though Al McAdam had a decent career, Reggie Leach was pretty good for Philadelphia. It's just endless bloodshed, basically, here. If you want the NHL equivalent of Terrifier 2 in a hockey team, this is it. So they were well known for trading away top draft picks, as I've covered. And the Guy Lafleur draft pick being traded definitely needs to be mentioned, even though it's years before this. But it's interesting, too, because by the time you get to this point, Guy Lafleur is on his way to becoming a megastar, and they know this. They're still trading draft picks. They're still making the same mistake. They're still adding... It feels like they were trading for volume, so they would trade a player for 4 guys, but those 4 guys weren't worth what that one player was, as evidenced by the Leach trade and various others. Going through their trade history, I wouldn't recommend it. It's depressing. So 67-68, their first year in the NHL, they had 15 wins in 74 games. More than they had in 73-74 when they were an expansion team. They then had a team record in 68-69 of 29 wins in 76 games. That's the good times. It dropped to 22 the year after that, still 76 games. The NHL went to a 78-game schedule. They won 20, then 21, and then hard times hit, right? Those 20-win seasons, long forgotten. They had 16 wins, then the 13 and 73-74. The year after, they bounced back to 19 wins. It's hard to say that. And then 75-76, 80-game schedule, as it had been in 74-75 as well, and 27 wins. So some gradual improvement, but not enough, right? You have 27 wins in 80 games. That's not enough. And it's not enough in a market that was not enamored with this team, and rightfully so. So they moved to Cleveland in 76-77, where they won 25 games, and followed that up in 77-78 by winning 22 games. And then they folded. They merged with the Minnesota North Stars, and then a little over a decade after that, the San Jose Sharks are born out of the Minnesota North Stars, and via a convoluted expansion process. The California Seals, again, outside of drafting, player development, trades, ownership, market, building, outside of all those things, pretty good team. And the logo, yeah. I don't think we're going to see this on the front of a jersey anytime soon. I'd be really surprised if San Jose ever did a throwback that actually had this logo on the front, because that doesn't look like a seal to me. Nope. I don't know what they were going for there, but they didn't nail that either. So it was a disastrous season that went just from those first 2 games when they won them. After that, it was all downhill, and I totally understand why the marketplace wasn't clamoring to go out and buy tickets, And when you see these trades that don't work out and you see guys go on and become stars elsewhere, whether it's draft picks they've traded off or players they've traded for pennies on the dollar, it just doesn't work. So the California Golden Seals, really and truly a team that was a disaster, but 73-74, it stands out because just the 13 wins. But I could have done this video on almost any season they played and made the argument that it was a really rough, awful season. So there's that. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.